From lightning-fast, bone-crushing ichthyosaurs to bizarre shark relatives the size of buses, prehistoric Earth developed some devastatingly powerful predators. Whales are regarded as the most massive animals alive today, with the blue whale as potentially the biggest animal of all time. But big cetaceans have been rivaled or matched by plenty of carnivores in the fossil record. This is every time nature evolved whale-sized predators. Discounting other whales, of course. We're not that self-referential. The first question we need to ask is, what is whale-sized anyway? The term whale doesn't actually carry much taxonomic weight since it's usually used as a paraphyletic term to refer to big cetaceans while ignoring actual evolutionary ancestry. If you want to be technical and accurate, dolphins are whales, and so are porpoises, although they aren't referred to as such in most casual conversations. For the purposes of this video, we're going to be using the world record Orcanis orca as our standard, an exceptional 10-ton bull. Predators that match or exceed this mass can make it onto the list. Making a video about a bunch of small, dolphin-sized animals kind of goes against the spirit of the title after all, and if I'm going to be clickbaity about a cool premise, I want to actually deliver. First, the honorable mentions. Animals that are close to the giant orca tier but don't quite make it, or are aquatic predators that are simply too incredibly awesome to leave out of the video entirely. Lipleurodon ferox is one such creature. Many paleo enthusiasts were first introduced to this pliosaur in the 1999 Walking with Dinosaurs, in which it was presented as a 25-meter, 150-ton shark-munching kaiju. That depiction, while admittedly cool beyond the ability of my 6-year-old self to adequately process, was highly inaccurate, based on vibes and half-baked reports of incorrect measurements. The real Lipleurodon was still a formidable marine hunter, however. At 8 meters long and approximately 6 metric tons for the largest specimens, it was triple the mass of the largest great white sharks, and would have used its 4-flipper system to outmaneuver its prey in the seas of the late Jurassic period. Cymbospondylus youngorum is larger than an average bull orca, at 14 meters and over 7 tons, but doesn't quite reach the minimum mass we decided upon for this video. Still, Cymbospondylus was one of the most fearsome predators of the early Triassic, resembling an enormous eel stuffed into an ichthyosaur body. It showed up only a couple million years after the end Permian extinction, which wiped out a significant portion of marine life, which implies that ichthyosaurs likely evolved in the late Permian. Enough of their representatives survived the devastating extinction to then flourish in the Triassic period, becoming the undisputed masters of the early Mesozoic oceans. Adestus vorax falls short of orca size, but at 7 meters long and 2 to 3 tons, it was the largest predator on the planet during the Carboniferous period. It was a holocephalian, a group of elasmobranchs that include modern chimeras, and had forward protruding tooth whorls that could snatch and tear prey. Each tooth was highly serrated, giving them the ability to more effectively cut through flesh. If you're at all interested in large prehistoric ocean predators, you've likely heard of the recent estimates for the serrate octopus Nanaimoteuthis hagerti. It's known from an enormous beak from the Pender Formation of Canada, larger than that of even the biggest giant squid. Based on modern serrate octopus beaks, the animal could have been anywhere between 6 and 18.6 meters long, with most third-party estimates congregating in the 8 to 10 meter range. With its proportionally short tentacles and robust body, Nanaimoteuthis is in the running to be the biggest cephalopod and possibly biggest invertebrate of all time, although it's still only a fraction of the mass of a large orca. Ichthyosaurs give us the real giants. Temnodontosaurus trigonodon was a sleek, wicked fast hunter from the Jurassic period with long, powerful jaws, a shark-like tail, and skin structure that allowed it to swim in almost total silence as it burst towards its prey. Its huge eyes were adaptations that let it hunt in darkness, and it likely fed on large squid and other invertebrates in addition to marine vertebrates human size or larger, including other ichthyosaurs as indicated by preserved stomach contents. Healed wounds found in the skulls of multiple individuals show that they fought one another fiercely, using strong bites to pierce bone in battles over territory or mates, or perhaps even attempted predation on their own species. One of the smaller specimens weighed about 1.8 tons at just over 7 meters long, which would indicate that the biggest fragmentary T. trigonodon, at about 13.5 meters, weighed in at nearly 13 tons. Combine speed, stealth, power, and ferocity into the perfect aquatic predator, and you get Temnodontosaurus. Shonosaurus is another huge carnivorous ichthyosaur, but was earlier than Temnodontosaurus and more robustly built. This late Triassic giant has been found in huge groups, potentially representing schools of migrating parents headed to shallow nursery waters. Their teeth were sharp, laterally compressed, and multitudinous, perfect for their diet of giant invertebrates. Adult Shonosaurus were about 13 to 14 meters long and weighed about 24 tons, making them more than twice the size of the biggest orca ever recorded. But as is common with ichthyosaurs, fragmentary specimens hint at much bigger individuals. There are multiple centra from dorsal vertebrae that dwarf those of the 13-meter specimens, indicating a top range for the species of 15 to 18 meters and masses of 32 to 54 tons. That is definitively baleen whale-sized, but these guys had sharp teeth the size of small knives. Himalayasaurus teeth were another matter. This thick-skulled ichthyosaur from Tibet is poorly described, but the material we have belonged to an enormous macropredator. Typically estimated at 15 meters and roughly 30 tons, Himalayasaurus was briefly suggested to have been a sympospondylid, but newer material reflects a more likely Shastosaurid identity, preserving the older size estimates. Then, of course, there's Tibetosaurus, a dubious genus that has recently had more undescribed material uncovered that appears to be a raptorial ichthyosaur even larger than Himalayasaurus. Perhaps Ichthyotitan severnensis should have been an honorable mention. Not because of the body size, but the lack of knowledge about its diet. We've only found portions of the jaw that wouldn't hold teeth, so whether it was more of a beaked squid hunter like Shastosaurus or a toothy monster like the majority of other Shastosaurids is unknown. No matter how you slice it, however, even with how fragmentary Ichthyotitan is, it's by far the biggest named ichthyosaur genus. A 2025 analysis found that the lowest you can reasonably get it, scaling from the skinny relative Basanosaurus, is 22.5 meters long and 40 tons. Basing it on Shastosaurus gets you a 23.7 meters, 67.6 ton behemoth. Averaging the two estimates yield 23.1 meters and 53.8 tons, since we're uncertain of its body proportions. It's known from multiple specimens within this size range, and the holotype likely wasn't fully grown, as indicated by a 2024 study on its bone structure. Yet even the various specimens referred to Ichthyotitan are dwarfed by the Oust colossus, another partial jawbone from a nearby area that also may not have been done growing. It's estimated as between 30 and 50% larger than Ichthyotitan in raw dimensions, which based on our average would correspond to a range of 30 meters and 118 tons, to 34.7 meters and 181.6 tons. The lowest you can get the Oust colossus, using the smallest estimates and assuming the differences between various bones are as small as possible, is about 80 tons. No matter what, this giant ichthyosaur was a beast, and more likely than not eclipsed the 100-ton mark, likely making it comparable to an average adult blue whale. With plesiosaurs, we drop quite a bit down in terms of size, but get an upgrade in weaponry. Pliosaurs were short-necked plesiosaurs with enormous skulls. Remember Liopleurodon from the beginning of the video? That's an example of a pliosaur, although Liopleurodon was far from the most formidable member of its family. Monchirosaurus boyacensis was a monstrous pliosaur from the Paja Formation of Colombia. Although it appeared to have not been fully grown, its skull was already 2.5 meters long, giving it some of the largest and most powerful jaws in the animal kingdom. We all know that mosasaurs were dominant predators in the Cretaceous, but often forget that pliosaurs much larger than any published mosasaur were the rulers of the early part of the period. Monchirosaurus was right on the line of 10 tons, with some estimates slightly lower and some slightly higher. Pliosaurus cavani is the next step up, but hails from the much earlier Jurassic period. It took a slightly different morphological approach, with a thinner skull, but was still a bulky, bobble-headed predator. At 9.8 meters long and 10.7 tons, it's bigger than Monchirosaurus but has a shorter skull, just over 2 meters. It's interesting how their proportions changed over time. The megapliosaurs were similar to tyrannosaurs in terms of how important their huge jaws became. Kronosaurus queenslandicus was another Cretaceous build, terrorizing the cold Eromanga Sea over 100 million years ago and fighting and eating other members of its species, hence the name Kronosaurus. Although its most well-known mount is poorly restored, given how they added a bunch of extra plaster vertebrae that exaggerate the length, it was still an enormous predator at 10.4 meters long and 11.4 tons, according to the most recent reconstructions. This really helps me appreciate how big orcas are. Sure, most are less than half the size of a Kronosaurus, but the fact that we have fast, social, intelligent, elephant-sized carnivores living in our oceans right now is crazy to me. Orcas are so cool that they seem made up sometimes. Suchicosaurus takes the second place slot on the pliosaurid podium, repping the Cretaceous once again with a 10.3 meter length and 12.8 to 13 ton mass, making it even more robust than Kronosaurus. Suchicosaurus lived in the Paja Formation, the same area that Monchirosaurus was from, making early Cretaceous Colombia one of the most terrifying places you could possibly visit. The holotype is remarkably complete and helps to fill in our understanding of morphology for less complete Cretaceous pliosaurs, and I will admit as an ichthyosaur fan, I'm extraordinarily jealous. We have the biggest guys, sure, but we also only get scraps most of the time. It's a hard life. This might be obvious, but sharks have reached the size of world record orcas numerous times in the fossil record. Today, we have whale sharks and basking sharks, which are absolutely enormous, but we're focusing on macropredators today to stay within the spirit of the video. Everybody has heard about Ototus megalodon, and for good reason. This was the biggest shark that has ever lived, with thousands of specimens in the 10 to 15 meter range and a few fragmentary giants indicating 20 to 24 meter sizes, with corresponding masses of 90 to 100 tons. Forget orcas, Max Megalodon could be comparable to world record humpback whales. But as cool as Ototus megalodon is, it often overshadows its smaller but just as awesome relatives from earlier times. Ototus auriculatus and Ototus chupatensis were up to 9.5 and 13.5 meters respectively, horrifying sizes if they were dropped into modern oceans, and corresponding to 20 to 30 ton weights for bigger specimens. But it wasn't just the water that offered up gigantic carnivores. There are 3 terrestrial or semi-terrestrial predators that may have breached that fabled 10-ton mark, and I shall present them to you in order of least to most certain. Spinosaurus. Yes, that's Spinosaurus. I recently made an entire video going into the detailed estimates for everybody's favorite sail-backed megatheropod, but to sum up, we have multiple highly fragmentary specimens that are enormous in comparison to the neotype and the holotype, which are already in the 3.8 to 4.5 ton range. There is a good argument to be made for adult spinos being 15-ish meters long and over 9 tons, with a possibility of exceeding 10 tons. I guess Spinosaurus is kind of cheating since it likely spent most of its time in rivers and lakes, but hey, we've got true land predators too that are even bigger. Zhusheng tyrannus is very likely to have exceeded the 10-ton orca standard at maximum size. The Zhusheng specimen, ZJZ179, is fragmentary like the big spinos, but has had more material assigned to it recently that should be published in 2027. It's an enormous, robust, and tall tyrannosaur, and there is a good chance that it pushed past 10 tons. There is a near guarantee that Tyrannosaurus rex meets the orca standard, with multiple specimens estimated at that mass with good methodology. From Sue, Cope, and Scotty to G-Rex and Dynamasaurus, 10 tons is pretty much locked. I've got a video going through every single giant Rex specimen if you're interested in learning more about the methods that calculated such impressive masses. So yeah, we often think of the whale size class as something reserved exclusively for filter feeders or herbivores, but that's really not the case at all. Under the right circumstances, carnivores can match the body masses of the biggest prey animals in their environments and sometimes exceed them, as seen in the Hell Creek Formation with Tyrannosaurus and all over the world with Megalodon. One of the drafts of this video was based on comparing real-life ocean predators with Subnautica leviathans, but then I took another look at the measurements for various leviathans and decided that would be really boring. Maybe if enough people comment on the idea, I can do a prehistory versus Subnautica size comparison or something to ride the hype wave for the second game coming out. That actually sounds really fun now that I'm thinking about it. Huh. I'm the Vividen, and I'm going to go play Subnautica 2 right now, because it's peak. Amen.